It's a very large and wide-ranging consultation. I think there's about over 150 questions with many different market participants. So I think it's covering a lot of different territory. It's really to be welcomed because it's great that the Commission is looking at ways to improve the securitization market, particularly in view of some of the reports from the Draghi Commission, etc. Overall, I think, for CE, there are some specifics that I'll comment on in a moment. But just generally in terms of kind of synthetic securitization and true sale securitization, there is a bit of a divergence in the objectives because synthetic securitization, there's already a fair amount of harmonization because the regulations that are in place, mean that it's still kind of having to be applied the same way in Greece or in Denmark or in the Czech Republic. Whereas on the true sale securitization side, which is for funding, you're more subject to local legal and tax requirements, where I think the scope for harmonization is a bit more limited. In terms of CE, I think there are a number of kind of pertinent factors. One is because in CE you have a larger number of standardized banks. The changes to the output floor, which have been proposed, so reducing from 10% to 7% for IRB, 15% to 12% for standardized, I think really will help kind of CE issuers. I think on the other side, within the regulation, there's some thought on kind of having some other safeguards in place in terms of tranche thickness. But given the market is used to what's currently in place, maybe that's not necessary. And another factor for CE banks is in terms of homogeneity. Homogeneity is a requirement under STS that the portfolios all have to exhibit kind of certain similar characteristics. Obviously, it's working very well and a lot of STS deals are being done. But for CE banks where the portfolios are smaller, some of those restrictions on cross-jurisdictional deals and how those are being kind of, interpreted for the purposes of STS, maybe that needs to be looked at in the context of homogeneity. On the true sale side, I think what would be very, very helpful as an output from the consultation would be to take on board the views of the insurers and pension companies as potential investors in securitization, because securitization needs to have more investors coming in. And I think any change in kind of regulation beyond, kind of strict securitization regulation, but, Solvency II, et cetera, that can make securitization a more attractive investment for insurers and pension companies. I think that's something that's going to help all issuers, including those in CE. So CE has a flourishing market now on the synthetic side for capital, where we have both breadth and depth. Breadth in that most jurisdictions now have had some form of synthetic securitization, and depth in that in countries like Poland, you're seeing many different types of transaction, different asset classes coming from different issuers. So on the synthetic side, I think, it benefits from, firstly, there aren't that many alternatives to raising capital. And secondly, you have harmonization to a high degree in the current regulatory framework. On the true sale side, of course, on funding, there are, you're competing with many types of funding instruments. And where interest rates have been lower, it hasn't been necessary to kind of go through more complex structures, including securitization. What can change that is obviously now interest rates are higher. And if more investors come into the market, then some of those challenges that hold back true sale securitization in the region could be overcome. The challenges are, firstly, the kind of the operational burden to set up a securitization, which can be very high for a first-time issuer, and then the specifics of legal and tax, which are different in every jurisdiction, and have to be analyzed and assessed by potential investors on a country-by-country basis. But if the economic value becomes more compelling, so we can bring more investors into the market, and this can be seen by CFOs and treasurers, then I think we can start to see a change, given that the expectation is now to have higher interest rates for a longer period of time. Yeah, I think it's fantastic because on the first day you have a broader FIG conference with covering kind of all asset types and payment systems, etc., that affect banks. And the next day, today, we have an event focused solely on securitization. So I think for participants across the 2 days, you have a unique opportunity to meet people from different parts of institutions, and network and build those dialogues and discussions. And having a kind of securitization day is fantastic, because the market, after a long period of kind of slow growth, now is really developing, especially on the synthetic securitization side. So to crystallize that next to the broader Inviso conference, I think is a unique platform for people to get together and connect.